Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Phil. So nice to
How are
see
you?
you. We were
Nice
we
to
were
see you.
we were just talking about distractions and how easy it is to get distracted in life and how interesting it is, how easy it is to be distracted
Hmm.
and how important it is to to not let yourself get caught in the chaos of it, which is funny
Hmm.
because we're talking about the third house, which in the higher way, it's not chaotic at all. But in the lower way, it feels very chaotic.
Hmm. It's a very busy place. It's, but, but it's also a great place for creativity. I just have a very positive vibe about the third house, probably because I'm Gemini. I don't have any planets in the third house, but I definitely know that energy.
Yeah, well, third house is learning, right? It's reading
Hmm.
and writing.
Hmm.
It's information, like getting
Hmm.
information, like
Hmm.
school, like younger school, for instance, I always think that's so interesting. If you go back to the first house, you're born, second house, who are you, right? Like, how do you feel safe? And then just right when you're feeling safe, you have to go to school. Go
Right.
off to school, go to preschool and go learn. That's very third house.
Yeah, it's a little bit opposite of Taurus, is that you are going out in the world and you're exploring new things, and you have to develop you have to develop communication skills to do that.
Yeah, and like learning to talk to people and getting what you want, right? Because they just don't, it's not like your parents or your siblings. You ever notice that you have siblings? So each kid, they actually have to speak less. Right? And my third kid spoke later, I think, than the other kids because the other sisters would just hand them things. They didn't have to ask for what they wanted. There was just always someone giving them something, where the first one kind of
Right.
if you're not asking, there's not all these people just, or maybe it's the same. I don't know. It's a very interesting, it's siblings. Talking about siblings is the third. See, it all just comes to
Hmm.
us. If we remember, it's short journeys.
Learning about your neighborhood, like the people in your neighborhood, collecting information from all of those people and exchanging information. So when you're saying hello to the mailman and talking about the weather and asking about, what's your route like today? This is all data collection, but it helps you form a secure understanding of your environment. And that's what I think kids do that a lot as they're figuring things out. They want to be sure of a few things. So when they see, you know, that they go to the they go to the grocery store and they see the same person behind the checkout, things like that, I think help kids feel less anxious about this big new world that they're being introduced to.
Yeah, and us too. Anxious is another third house word, you would say, probably, right? Because the chaotic energy, anxiety. And there is
Hmm.
something nice about having people that you're familiar with, like familiar people. I wonder, like, I don't know where aunts and uncles are, but it is interesting about siblings, and siblings are familiar. They feel safe. You know them. It's
Hmm.
this, our relationships. And I think of Mr. Rogers, right? Is like, what kind of neighbor do you want to be?
Hmm.
Right? Like, what kind of neighbor do you want to be? And words, like how we speak to our neighbors. Is it a Bible passage about treating our neighbors? Do you know what I'm talking about in the Bible
Hmm.
passage?
Yeah, love thy neighbor. That's one of the commandments.
Love thy
Which
neighbor.
is that's a powerful one, isn't it? You know, it's it benefits your neighbor, but it also benefits you. I mean, that love comes back because especially I think if you have children and your neighbors have children, then you both understand how important it is to make the environment for your children as safe as possible and to provide them with as much as you can.
Well, in a way, when you're it's the same idea of learning. The more you learn, the more you're able to. I always go back to the more information you get, the more your understanding is, the safer you feel. I think it is interesting that you keep saying safe because it's going to go into the fourth house where safety is really important. And maybe all the houses on the bottom of the chart are the priority is how do we learn to be safe in them? Like safe in our ability to learn, safe in our mind, right? In the third house. It's an interesting thought of the word safe, safe with a neighbor. Is this neighbor safe?
Mhm. And so also you're building confidence as you're going through those houses below the horizon. You're developing skills, you're learning, you're absorbing them, you're learning about yourself. And many of these things you're learning for the first time. We talked about this before, I can remember learning to tie my shoe, and I knew that my sister could do it. And that was the key motivator for me to do it. She was a year older than me, and that felt like decades older when you're that young. But I had to really focus and concentrate and do it step by step and then do it over again and keep repeating it. And it took time and I took intense focus, making those rabbit ears and then twisting the lace around the right way. I can remember being completely 100% focused on this. And I kept doing it until I could do it as well as my sister could. And then, of course, it becomes second nature and you forget about it. But I can still remember exactly where I was. I stopped and I kept trying until I got it. And then it wasn't so scary. The mystery was gone. It was doable.
Well, it goes back to makes me think about how important it is the balance of the opposites, right? And then you think about the ninth house and just how intentional it has to be. If you want to learn something or if you want to do something new, how determined, how focused you have to be, and how capable that third house is if it
Hmm.
chooses to have the
Hmm.
focus to
Hmm.
like zone in on something. I go back to like the mind, like that mindfulness, right? That ability to calm the mind and be present with whatever you're doing would be a very high way of doing the third house.
Right.
Because our
It's interesting
mind,
that, yes, it's interesting that you mentioned the ninth because I did a little bit of reading on the third house, knowing that we would talk about it. And, the third, fifth, and ninth are tied together in the fact that they're creative houses and they're of the mind, I would say. But in Gemini, in the first part of that trifecta, you're collecting information and you're storing it, right? But you're using it locally to develop skills. Then in the fifth house, you're really condensing all that data information and you're really creating something creative from it and you're presenting it through yourself. So you're presenting yourself and you're getting all that data to either entertain or enlighten or both, or just to make someone smile. But you're letting the world know, here I am, here's what I got, here's what I'm sharing. And I hope you love it because I want you to love it. That's why I do it. And then the ninth house is all of those things, but in the ninth house, that creativity and that knowledge, that broad spectrum of intellectual pursuits, whatever you want to call them. They could be anything. But in the ninth house, it gets into publishing and spreading it around, but also creating a deeper understanding of it. So let's say, in Gemini, you're collecting the data, and the fifth house in Leo, you're creating a creative product or an item or an image or something, an intellectual property, let's say. And the ninth house, that's where it's used wisely and spread
you're
around.
disseminating it. You're
You're
disseminating it out
disseminating it.
into the world.
Exactly. Right. And that it remains it remains that way in the ninth house. So, if you publish a book, it gets published again, or it gets turned into a movie, or, you could take that with any type of thing, that was once an idea, but
Yeah,
it
and
went
then
through
there's a
that
broader
process.
meaning to it. Also, when you publish a book, you think of words, like, so you make all these words and you put these words in, and then it's like you're putting meaning to, like, so then the book gets created and then gets published, and then you really have to let go because in some ways, whoever's the reader or the perspective, how someone's going to perceive it, right, through their third house mind and their eyes, is their it'll be created meaning to it. So it's a beautiful way that you just showed that. I like that in how everything that we do is correlated to all the houses pretty much, right? It's like it makes me think of, well, all I always say this, all we are is our words. And then if you think about that fifth house of who you project to be out in the world, right? On that stage of being human, well, really is what you say. That's it. I mean, right? It's like, what
It
am I
is, and
saying?
then
Or
it
else
comes.
I'm a mime. If I'm a mime, then it's not what I'm saying. But really,
Mhm.
it makes you think how important it is, our thinking, what we say out in the world, what we say to ourselves, what we say to other people, what we say to our neighbor. I love that. I never looked at it in that way. So thank you for that. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I just learned that over the weekend in my pulling out the books and reviewing things, because this is a third house thing. I'm telling you about how I read, and my reading style is I can sit and read and read and read, but my mind can go off track. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where I'm reading and reading, I'm going and I'm reading, but then I'm thinking about lunch, and then I'm thinking about this, and I'm going back to my reading. And many times I have to retrace myself because my mind is actually doing the job automatically, but I'm not dwelling on the actual message.
Well, yeah,
And I
it
think,
goes back to like read when you're read if you're re are you really okay? I go back to this idea of presence, which is I think if you look at any house
mhm,
and you could be practicing meditation in any house pretty much, but let's say if I'm reading, am I actually reading? Do I actually know what words I just read? Is it
mhm,
actually am I getting it into my body? Am I understanding? Like go back to that, am I understanding what I'm reading? Is it functional? Am I capable? Am I getting the information to be able to use to teach? Because I mean, third house is teaching, maybe not in a higher way, like in a higher learning way, but it's learning very basic information, right? Isn't, third house would be very much elementary
yes,
school, but also I even think middle school would be third house. Like in new information that's coming in. And then if you want to go deeper in, you would go into the ninth house. But it's like the
yeah,
basics, learning the basics of everything. And so
yeah, and that.
reading,
Mhm.
it's hard to not get distracted. And then another word for the third house is where am I distracted? Where am I wasting time?
Mhm. And it is interesting, third house elementary school, learning new things as a child. All of those experiences require repetition. It takes a lot of time to get through elementary school. You have to learn a lot. That's and you have to keep repeating it till you get it right, because you want to do well. And I think that's another third house realm as well. Whereas, in the ninth house, there's a certain mastery to everything that you're doing. In the third house, it's more like the incubator. The,
Yeah, well,
you
and
know,
what's interesting is like that you use the analogy of the shoelace because once you learn to tie the shoelace, it's really easy. But if you're reading something, that's the first time you're reading something, it is similar to the idea of a shoelace because I better
yes.
really go back and make sure I'm understanding it. And let me reread it and see if I'm conceptualizing it because it's new. And so anytime something's new, there is a learning curve to it. And it's not easy. And I think we mistake that it's easy to tie the shoelace. Or I was thinking riding a bike might be third house, right? There's
Hmm.
wheels. Anything, I think anything with wheels is third house. And
Yeah.
think how hard it was to
Transportation.
learn. For me, it took me a really long time to learn to ride a bike. And my one of my daughters was so quick because she saw the neighbor and she just wanted to keep up. And so I don't know why some things easier than other things for people, but that third house is how nice if we had patience for ourselves, didn't judge ourselves so much.
Yeah, you're right on the money with transportation. Transportation is the third house. Cars, bikes, skates, anything to do with transportation is
I
third
think
house.
accidents are third house, or is that Mars? But I do think there's something with accident, like things with
Right.
like the fastness and the quickness of things are third house. Like there's a quickness, like rushing.
Hmm. Right. Right.
Rushing is like, I don't know, it's words. It's, and I always think there's something interesting about, can you learn that accidents happen right by your house because you've done this so many times. So
Hmm.
the repetition of your life maybe
Hmm.
is third house. I don't know. I
Hmm.
actually, it's so funny. I usually do look up what each house is. I did not look it up before I came, but I do
Hmm.
think it's interesting about how important it is what information we're getting. Okay, I go back to that too, how important what we're hearing is and what we believe, because we could think we're right about things, going back to ninth house, based on what information we're getting and how are we getting that information and who's telling us the information.
Good point. And then again, I think that's where you're collecting the data, right? Because you might be getting a news report about the same incident in the neighborhood, right? And so somebody will tell you something happened and somebody else will tell you the same thing happened, but in a different way, you
Well, like
know?
gossiping is, yeah, gossiping
Yes.
is the third house.
Yes, it
Right.
is.
And what's gossip? It's based on like someone's perceivement of things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it makes me think how important it is to question what information you're getting and
Mm-hmm.
where it's coming from and how,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I think it's so important. On
Mm-hmm.
there was a my daughter had a book. It was books for third house, and it was about a teacher who had such a problem with her students at school. Like she was a college professor and she was like, these kids are just, they hardly get to class. They're just, so she actually took a sabbatical and she went and she was a student, which is the third house word. And her perspective changed completely because she saw it through their eyes. And it was all of a sudden she saw it all differently. And one of the things she said, it was like she was talking to an international student and she's like, what's the difference in America? This is in like 2000, by the way. I think it was in 2000. She's like, what's the difference between America and China? And the guy said, well, you guys believe the news. Like we know not to believe the news. And then you
That's
think
what
about,
the guy in China said.
yeah, it was in 1999. The girl went, it was, so the book was written in 1999. And the guy from China said, Americans believe the news, where in China, we
In
don't believe anything the news says. And I always think that's very third house, ninth house.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, very
So
interesting.
the disseminating of information, which is
Mhm.
now done on a very large scale.
Right. I think all this learning in the third house has to do with adaptability. And so I think adaptability is a Gemini word, not so much third house, but it
I think
applies
it's third
here.
house too.
Yeah, well, I think of it adaptability as, yeah, a quality, you know. So, but adaptability would be behind all the reasons that you're learning in the third house, right? Because you want to, again, you're collecting information about your immediate environment, your home, your siblings, your parents, your pets, your backyard, and then school, and then the neighborhood. But you're using that information to navigate your environment, just be safe and to be secure. And those are all necessary things,
Or to see
you
what
know.
you're interested in. I mean, you're
Mhm.
navigating your in and also what you're interested in, right? Like what actually piques your interest. I
Yes,
mean, it's
what
a
I like, what I don't like, all of those, and all of those things are, I wish I could go back and have that feeling of wow, wonderment about seeing a frog,
but
you
you
know?
can. Wait, so I go back to this beginner's mind. I think I love that you're saying this because okay, how about if we know nothing and we're so open-minded, which is a very third house word,
Hmm.
and you actually really actually saw the frog, not what you think a frog is, or but you wanted to see the frog just and had no predetermined of what a frog looks like. It is when you have a beginner's mind, Phil, it really is you ever like walk out of a meditation and you see something and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, have I ever seen this before?
I did that once looking at my hand. Oh, that's my hand. That's when you really had a really good session. But yes, I know exactly what you mean.
So I do think there's a wonderment. I think that's what makes learning so exciting. I think that's what makes even just a trip to the supermarket could be exciting if I don't have any, if I was open-minded on what could be possible.
I can remember being so young that we were excited when my mother took us to a grocery store that had sliding doors. So you would go through the one sliding door that would close behind you, and the other sliding door would open, to hold in
Yeah,
the
like a
air conditioning.
vestibule, like the isn't it called a vestibule?
Yes,
I wait,
yes.
I actually think that might be a third house thing too. It's like a walkway, something.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It's like a crossroads or a street would same thing. But we were fascinated by, being able to walk into this thing, the doors shoot open and then they shoot behind you, and then another set of doors open in front of you and you go through it. That was like going to Disneyland for us.
Yes, and yeah, that too, and that was amazing. There's something I think that might be a third house word, whatever that in between thing is, the in
Hmm.
between. And then do you remember the pushing the circular door?
Yes,
Oh, did you not think that
we
was the greatest thing? And then how the
we
door
love
opened,
that.
the
Yeah.
opening of the door, and just the fascination. I think that's a nice word too for third house of what you find fascinating.
Hmm.
I like that.
And holding on to that fascination,
Yeah, and then
because
what you're
there's,
fascinated by, you would then want to get more information on and then go deeper into that, or then create something around it because you're excited. That's a very third house word. What I'm excited about. It was funny because I kept on saying, well, what are you excited about? I didn't even realize what a third house word, what makes you excited. Because when you're excited about something, you do want to get more information about it or about a person. How about when, like, you ever meet someone and you get excited by them and you just want to talk to them?
learn about them, collect information about them. Exactly. Exactly. Who
Yeah.
is this person? Are they like me? How are they like me and how are they not like me?
Well, it was go back to, that book about how to make friends and influence people. It was all about that. It's like, do I find similarities with that person? Do they remind me of me by their gestures, by the way they speak?
Yeah.
Can I find some kind of relationship with them,
Hmm.
some kind of balance?
I Children do that. I mean, 5-year-olds do that. When they meet other kids, they're curious. And then they show them a toy to see, see my toy. Do you like it? And then that's how they figure out if they're going to get along.
Yeah, if they're compatible, right? And I go back to
Right.
this, and then you go back to thinking as we get older, we are so much more, like go back to the lower side of the ninth house, we're so much more gentle. judgmental about people and we think we know them. We're not open-minded. We're kind of closed up. So,
Right, because we've made all our observations and we categorize them so that we can make sense of the world that we live in, right? So it's not even good or bad. This is how we're collecting all this data and we're putting it in a structure so that we can understand what we're looking at and so we can feel safe about it. And we stick with those beliefs because it keeps us, it keeps us steady, and I think it is necessary. You have to, be Saturnian about this. You have to build your structure and, that's how you can move forward and be secure. You can't constantly be in that fluid state. You mean you could, you can, absolutely. But
well, maybe you can. And maybe that's maybe what you said about I wish I could see the frog in that way. Maybe we can. Maybe we can. I don't know.
well, seeing the frog in person is so much more of an experience than seeing a drawing of a frog in a book or hearing somebody talk about a frog. Actually coming across a frog is, I mean, this is how I remember it. It was like seeing God, a miracle. There it was. I mean, I can remember seeing a deer in the wood and having the same feeling. I just I stopped breathing, I stopped moving, and I just stared. I wanted to take it all in as completely as I possibly could. And it was amazing, such an amazing experience.
Yeah, well, it makes me think about you could read it in the book, and then you have to go out to the ninth house to go out and experience it in real life, right? So
Mhm.
it's what you read and what you think, or what you believe, or what you hear, read, or listen to. How do you go out and have that experience and travel to or go on a journey somewhere to have a deeper perspective of it, to have it make it real? So it is
Mhm.
interesting, right? It's like it goes back to how important it is to balance the two houses that you could read, but are you experiencing it in real life too? Versus
Mhm.
just keeping your head in the book. You have to go out into the world. You have to go out into the world and experience it. It's good on paper, but maybe it's even better in out in the world.
Yeah. And you're gonna scrape your knee now and then when you do that, but that's all part of it.
Yeah, but it's tangible, right? It's like the
Hmm.
scraping the knee is part of the adventure. It's part of
Hmm. Yep.
are we ever really safe, Bill? I don't know. Maybe not. So maybe we're all so scared of being safe that we're actually stopping ourselves from asking the right questions, I guess.
Yeah. It's all about the way you feel. I mean, some people are just extraordinarily confident, and that's great.
I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about that lately, and I don't think anyone is. I think some people are just good at pretending they are,
That- Sure. Yeah.
which would be very fifth house, right? So they're pretending they are with the words, and then it goes out and they broadcast it. But I think deep down, we're all our minds are busy.
So yeah, I think of that Leo energy, right? They want to be loved and they can be the most loving people, big-hearted. I love Leos. They're all of that. But if they feel uh it's like the cowardly lion thing where they come on really strong, but they're sensitive souls and they can get wounded by things and they can react, in a
Yes,
passionate way.
roar.
Roar like I am angry. And sometimes it can be very innocent, you know, like you didn't pay enough attention to me, and now I'm going to have a temper tantrum.
It's also very much that third house with words. You go back to how we react to things, how we speak, how we respond. It's words, how we respond is so important. Wait, and we'll
Yeah, so you were talking about the lion and Leo, but I really appreciate the adaptability of the third house.
Yes, it can be a great advantage in many situations where you must find a way to navigate. If you're thrown into a new environment, you have to meet new people, you have to find out what their temperament is, and then you have to work with that. Whereas if you have a lot of cardinal energy, that's not at all what you're interested in doing. Not at all. And you have no interest, it's not a goal of yours. Whereas I think in the third house, where it's mutable, it is an interest and it's a goal. And it's also a gift of mutable energy. There can be a lot of negatives associated with mutability, but when you work it the right way, I think you can really quickly adjust to whatever's happening. And things happen in our lives very quickly. You know, your car could break down, many, many things. And, how do you
Well, life
react to
change,
that?
life change. This is what's so interesting. It's like we really don't. So you might not have anything in the third house, but you'll always have transits going on in the third house, right? And we can't control things change. So immutable energy is, or adaptability or flexibility is something that none of us can escape. We cannot escape change. There's one
No,
guarantee. What is it? What's that quote? There's one guarantee in life is that everything changes.
right. Yeah. And that's, it's like it's Darwinism, right? You have to find a way to adjust to your surroundings as because things continue to change.
Yeah. And I think so much of, I go back to words and how important our words are. And thinking about, if you even just go back to the idea of going to third house, then ninth house, that our words. So I'm a big manifest. Are you a big, you're also a big manifester, right?
Hmm.
And just the magic of words, if you go to like Wayne Dyer and how I wonder if he had a very big third house, but there's something about the gift of our words and using it in a way of creating our reality.
That is a central belief of Kundalini yoga as well. It's an ancient principle about sound. And so in Kundalini tradition, they really encourage practitioners to be very careful about the words because of the energy. It's a transmission of energy. And once it leaves your mouth, it just vibrates outward on the sound current. So
Even on the thoughts current, right? Like if are you creating your reality with our thoughts and with the words we say, but also just simply our thoughts, like our thoughts, our energy, it's vibrations.
right, but more so when it actually becomes physical. So when it becomes a vibration out of your mouth and it can be heard, it really it manifests. So if you're a manifester, you want to be aware of the intentions of your words. It's important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think our words are probably the most important things that we don't, we're not as we don't hear how much we complain, I guess, if that's the word, right? And how we talk about what we don't want. And so it's such an important part of that third house energy is really asking for what you want.
And I also think it's important when you put it out there that you're hearing yourself speak it, which so it's as much for your it's benefiting you in more ways than one when you speak something in a positive, supportive, loving way. It helps the environment and whoever receives it, but it also helps you because you are also hearing the sound that your own voice is making, and that has real effects on your consciousness, your unconscious, and your subconscious.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I don't really think about the elements. And you just said you were talking about that it's mutable. And so if you think about just the houses in general and you go from the cardinal, then you go fixed, then you go mutable. What's also interesting is then you go back to cardinal, right?
Mhm.
Mutable, no fixed, and then mutable. So that means that the two houses, the third and the sixth, that are both ruled by Mercury, are both mutable signs. I never thought about that before, but how interesting it is because it's so mercurial, right? Mercurial is like constant,
Yeah.
constant
Well,
change.
uh, Aries is
Cardinal.
cardinal, Taurus is fixed, Gemini is mutable. Then back to Cancer, which is cardinal,
Cardinal again. So then the fifth house Leo would be,
fixed, and then Virgo is mutable.
yeah,
Yes.
that's so interesting, right? That they're, so you have the third and the sixth house that are both ruled by, I mean, it depends what sign, but if you just think about third house, traditional third house, Gemini, and then Virgo, those two signs are both ruled by Mercury. And
Right.
just how important, how much change is very mercurial, like that trickster energy.
Right. And of course, because Virgo is Earth, Mercury has a more practical manifestation in Virgo. That kind of getting things done and putting things in order and setting things straight, categorizing, critiquing, understanding the value of everything, and being able to discriminate, and really drill down into details, which again is a mental activity bestowed by Mercury, but completely different than the mercurial energy of Gemini in
Yeah,
mutable
it's much
air.
more worrying. It's more anxiety prone, right? It's much more into the details. But it is interesting to think about how much words could change things. It just makes me think how important it is. And it is an age old philosophy. This is like the secret, right? It's been like years and years and years. But there is like the secret about the secret is that, do you know this story? They made the secret and the original secret was cut. And do you know they took Abraham Hicks out of the secret? Do you know the
I
story?
didn't know.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And she says it's because the vibrational energy, like she'll say to you, there's a big piece missing from it because it's also so important about what your vibration is when you're saying it and the feelings that are attached to it. So it's not just our words, it's not just saying it, it's also the energy that you're at, right? Your energetic framework, but also you can't say I want to have $1 million and then not feel like an abundant, well-off person. Anyway, it's just an interesting thought. But yeah, actually, they did cut the secret. But it is the secret, and it's you go back to Think and Grow Rich. It all goes back to our words and creating our reality. Do you hear this? It is like thundering big time here. Do you hear it, or you don't hear it? Shaking. I wonder if thunder is. But wait, do you have that book where it says like what houses things are in?
What house?
Like, I wonder if storms, do you know like what storms would be like what weather wise? Like, is weather? third
I just
house?
think of moon energy when I think of storms.
Well, I have this book. It's great. Hold on. Wait, I have this great book. It's like this, it's great book,
Oh
which I know
yes.
I always have it right here. And so I'm just gonna, since it is stormy.
Neptune. Neptune would be storms.
Yeah, okay. Storms. Oh yeah, you're right. Like extra rain.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to see. Um, but then houses, would that be, let's see. Let's see what this book says. I love this book and I didn't even think about to look at it. Okay, let's see. I feel as if there's no accidents, but I could be wrong. But okay. Well, wait, it says, I don't even know what that says. It says TH seventh. So would it be a seventh house? Why would it be the seventh house? Maybe I'm mistaken on what TH is. Okay. TH,
I
let's
don't
see.
know.
TH, I guess it means it's a thing. It's seventh house. Why would that be a seventh house thing, a storm? So
Good
much to
question.
learn.
I'm stumped by that. That I would never would have guessed
Yeah,
seventh house.
wow. Isn't that interesting? When you hear this is wait, I think this is interesting since it came up there. This book is so interesting because it dehydration is third house. Would you ever think that? Like
No.
diseases that are attached to the third house?
Spring.
Well, what's the chakra? Because I'll say to you, head, so throat.
It would
So
be Mercury. Mercury, yeah, throat.
yeah. So it's like I just think it's so interesting about how we see things, but learning disabilities, like how you would see how you learn would be going into the third house. Anyway, but storm seventh house. So I'm going to really think about that. I think you're more, it's more of a Neptune thing. I think you were right.
Yeah, I would think, I don't know, even 12th house, because it's Pisces. But I can't recall anyone ever saying storms is 12th house. But because it's Piscean energy, I just think of larger forces.
Yeah, or I would think like lightning would be 11th house, right? I would think it's Aquarius energy
Uranus,
because of
yeah.
like the
Mhm.
thunder. But it is interesting of like, well, why do people categorize things and I'll say to you, are we right about everything? I mean, that's an interesting thing too, right? It's like I don't know, but I don't know. I could
I think it all gets to be very subtle because when you're working with astrological energies, I like to visualize an energy washing over another, and then another energy washing on top of that. So it's blending. It has doesn't have any hard edges to it because you can really start building qualities regarding transits and houses, and you build and build and build. But rather than having one energy necessarily negate another, you just have to fold it in, I think. Because it's like a Rubik's cube, but it's a soft one, where you
the
can
way
see
you
through.
are. It is all folding into each other because there's different signs that rule the houses, and then there's different planets moving through it. So in a way, it is this that's a beautiful way to explain it all, and that's why I think it's so confusing astrology, right? And why
Right.
people get blocked.
Mhm. Right. So, but I think of it as a Rubik's cube that's transparent. So you can see through all the cubes wherever you're looking. And that's how, those energies build on one another. So they're they're distinct, but they're blended. You're not pulling things apart. You're synthesizing things. You're building and building and building. But but in a very, like a watercolor. You start with one color, you put another color on it. You still see that original color, but you see a blend with the new color.
Yeah. Well, and that's true in general with your different with life, right? It's not it's always you're bringing it in from one place to another, right? You don't just go away and go on vacation and then all of a sudden you're a brand new person, right? And then everything that you experienced beforehand is yeah, it's like this blending of experiences put together. It's an interesting way to look at it.
But then when those little distinctions remain and they appear, let's say you're mixing blue and green and you get a neutral tone in the center, but you're still along the edge, you have blue and green. But let's say there's more blue, right? And that kind of describes a personality, then you see that peculiarity in the person, right? So they behave normally 95% of the time, but because of that little bit of color on the edge, for that 5% of the time, they have this eccentric point of view, or they do something that's very much them, and we know them right away when something happens or something is said, you know exactly who's saying it, right? That's the 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 extra element in everyone's chart, I think, that makes them unique, and that is what the astrologer, when they're looking at the chart, can see. This is where you're especially skilled at something. This is where you're especially uh, resistant. Or it could be anything.
Well, I was just saying that, like, and every that's what's beautiful about astrology, right? Is it's how someone reads your map of your stars is incredibly different through their view of their eyes and through the way they speak and their words. I mean, I think you go back to like a teacher, right? No teacher is going to be the same, right? No astrologer is going to be the same. It's a very interesting, or how someone sees that magic that's in your, that makes your vocabulary. Like if you go back just to third house, it makes how you speak uniquely you.
Hmm. That's right. And if you've got a heavily tenanted third house, then chances are very good that you're gifted in that area and that you find
Easy
it's easy, and that people
or
see
not
you.
easy, depending what is there, right? But
Right,
my guess is that if you have a sun in the third house,
right.
there's no affliction. I don't know. It might be someone that's like on the news or somebody that shines through the media.
Or even you could be the person in the neighborhood that people go to get their questions answered. You're the go-to person.
Yeah.
It could be a whole range of things.
Yeah, it's fun. Or maybe you're more sociable. Like I think it's an interesting thing because it is a very social, even though it's underneath, it's a very social house. It's a friendly house. It wants to get to know you
Yes,
versus
exactly.
other
Get
houses.
get
It seems like before the other two houses were much more. It's different. It's like I'm going out of the house now. I'm out. I'm my own
right,
person.
right. I mean, if you have third house energy, you could walk into any situation and with any group, and you're more likely than not to be able to blend in and have great conversations. Yeah, and that's the mutability part too. You could be at a rock concert, you could be at a church, you could be anywhere, and the people could be very different, but you naturally find connection with them, and there's just an easy flow.
Well, that would be so nice. I think that's true for everybody, that we all have a third house, that we all can figure out a way to have conversations with people. And I also think it's how about if we used it more freely, if we figured out how to use it in our own chart, if we could look at our own chart and say, well, how could I use my third house to the highest good? right? And you could look at
Right.
what the ruler of your third house is, and we could go deeper into that. But it's how do we just use all of everything that we have, these little gems in our charts for our highest good?
Yeah, everybody has a little very particular superpower regarding the third house. It could be a very narrow superpower, but it's very real. It could be something very specific, but everybody has it. Everybody has that potential to really shine in that particular way.
Yeah. And I do think we shine when we let people see us. And we all, I think what's so interesting is that everybody has something to say. And
Mhm.
I go back to then if we could listen, which is, I would think, a very much a third house word is our ability to listen and to receive information. And really, I mean, the most important thing I think in Gemini energy and third house energy is to have an open mind.
Absolutely.
So,
So that would be, the very narrow superpower that you could imagine as, you know, when I'm communicating, I'm very open-minded, you know, whereas somebody could say when I'm communicating, let's say it was Aries. When I'm communicating, I'm very direct. I'm very to the point.
yeah.
You could just go around the houses and describe a communication approach in a very specific way.
Yeah, that's like where the lines are. So, for instance, you're saying if Aries is the ruler, if Aries was on the cusp of the third house, then that would be the energy of that house, and to be able to use that energy to your highest good. And so, how you do that is you would see the lines going into that third house. And it's so interesting because that took me so long to understand that, right? And I think people get so, did you find that? Like, I find that to be so, I was telling you this, I sat on how I got this idea was I sat on the plane with this beautiful girl and she kind of got astrology and she said, I can't get the houses right. And I was like, the houses are the best part. Like, they are where things happen. It's like where
Right.
events occur. And if we could
Yeah.
get that right, we could understand ourselves so much better. But I don't think that a lot, like, I don't think we talk about the houses enough. I really don't. I think it's,
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, you could you could do a great reading with somebody just working on the most fundamental understandings of astrology. Without really getting too deep into the chart, you could just go around the houses and talk about the planets and the aspects, and it would be almost exhaustive, the information that you could share. But it's interesting that you mentioned that because I had struggles with houses and the idea of cusp, right? So the the sign on the cusp rules a whole house, which was makes sense now, but it took a little bit of adjusting for me because in some cases that cusp energy doesn't occur in the entirety of the house. But it's in that all important position of the entryway to the house, and therefore it has precedence.
yeah, and I think that's a perfect way to explain it. It's like the doorway in, and I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna say I think that the third house is doorways. I'm just guessing. I just keep on thinking it is, and so if you just think about it as that's how to enter that house, and so if Aries was there, it would be to be kind of courageous and brave, and to do it kind of immediate, right? Or if you had Taurus, how do you speak in a way where there's a confidence about you, right? Like a stable confidence about you.
Hmm.
Gemini, you'd be open minded. So it is interesting. It does make a big difference on the cusp houses, but it's very hard to get it. And I almost think it like goes over our heads in a way
Yes,
because
yes.
it doesn't seem grounded at all. It does, right? I don't know. It does. I'm glad to hear that you had a hard time, but also it's not something that's talked about. Like it's not something that is in all the schools that I've been to and all the there's never been just something on houses. I'll say right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
you hear about the signs, you talk about the planets, you don't talk about the houses.
right. And it's interesting that you mentioned the houses as the place where these energies occur. And once I understood that, I was able to kind of separate out houses and signs and planets, and finally kind of fell into place, and then I could understand it.
And it is. I think there's something about having well, it's like if you're learning anything new or tying your shoe, how do you have patience with yourself and not need to get all the information at once or have to understand it all at once and kind of be okay?
Mm-hmm.
That it was like what we were talking about earlier on, that
Mm-hmm.
beginner's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's kind of great to not know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the truth with astrology. We will never know everything. It's a
Mm-hmm.
constant, if you're a forever learner and you're really interested in learning, astrology is the
Right. So, and if you're comfortable with the idea that you're still learning, then it really becomes enjoyable. Whereas, if you get frustrated because there's some concept that you're having trouble with, and you get frustrated, and then you get intimidated by it, and then you back away and you kind of give up, and you missed jumping over that hurdle. And I'm saying that because it's happened to me myself. You know, but I think that I love learning enough to be okay with the idea that even if I read something in a book and I'm still scratching my head, I'll keep going with the book, and hopefully I say to myself, maybe when this comes up again, I will get it. But I don't want to close the book and put it away because I think that I'm not capable of understanding it. I want to believe that, of course, I'm capable of understanding it. I'm just not there yet. And I just have to keep, going through that door, finding that doorway, exactly what you said. Where is the door? Finding a way to open it and step through it.
yeah. Well, and I think that's perfect, right? We leave with that idea of what I think. Like if I think I can, I can. If I think I can't, I can't. And you just explain that so perfectly about how you just have to get a little more information and you'll understand it. You have to be willing, you have to be open minded to think you can. I mean, I think is very much the third house word. I think what I think, right? I mean, I speak, I am, I think. Wouldn't you think that's a third house word? I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was a glitch there, Courtney. I didn't catch the
Oh,
last part. I'm sorry.
well, I was just thinking how you said something of I think I can. And if you think you
Right.
can, you can. If you think you
Hmm.
can't, you can't.
Right.
And how the third house is I think. I think it's I think, right?
Hmm.
So,
And think about all the things that everybody does so well, and we don't even think about it. And that's what I think about when I feel frustrated with things. Pickleball is a great example that comes to mind just now. I'm taking pickleball classes, and I got a little bit of a talking to from the instructor because I'm having trouble with the scorekeeping. It's a little bit complicated in the sense that it's not a logical, simple
intuitive.
counting.
It's not intuitive.
Right. You have to switch the score depending on who's yelling it out.
Okay.
So if I'm the serving side and I just scored, then it's one, my score, zero, their score, and then I have to call out my server number, which could be one. But if the other team is repeating that score, they reverse it because they shout
They say
out
there's first.
their score first, which is zero. So they're inverting the numbers. So I told the instructor that I thought, you know, the mathematics of this game was too hard. And I told him that I thought mathematics was a form of witchcraft. And he said, you're just going to have to try because it's important for the other team and your teammate that you behave responsibly as a team member. So, and he's right. He's right.
Or
And
go
I'm
back to
not,
being open-minded that, maybe there's a reason. Well, wait, but
it's just I do have a trouble. I'm not, numbers are not my strong suit. I really have to give myself more time with them. Whereas words I don't have a problem with. But he was right. And that's what I think a coach should do, right? He's coaching me. He's
yeah.
telling me, you have to exceed your comfort zone here and you can do it. And he did a great job. He did exactly
Well, I mean, that
what.
goes back. I mean, I think you're explaining also not a coach, the teacher student. Like a teacher has to maybe explain it to the student, and which is very third house, right? It's all about learning, and it might not make sense to somebody, but you ask questions. You actually said, "I don't really think this makes sense."
Hmm.
You had a conversation,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
at the end of it, you understood why. I mean, you go back to thinking just what a great third house story that is.
Yes, it really is. It really kind
And you
of.
were open-minded, and you thought you can do this because you could have just been like, I can't do this. And then the
That's
teacher,
right.
a good teacher says you can. A good
Perfect.
teacher says you
Yes.
can.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And this just happened on Saturday. So he did everything right. Like he could have not cared at all. He could have said, go flounder away and, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. And then I
He'll
would have
be
felt
like the best pickleball player in the world. And he's going to look back at this video and be like, oh my God, what a silly thought that I had back then.
right. Well, yeah, it'll be all to his credit when I do, you know,
But
I will get it.
you'll
I
get
will
it.
be, I know I'll be more comfortable with it. I'm more than halfway there already,
It's
but
just a lot of new things at once. I think that's the interesting part too.
mhm.
And you think about Gemini and third house, there's just a lot of information being tossed at one time. And so it could be chaotic. And so I do think
Yes.
that when you're learning something new, there's a chaos in it.
Yeah. So I've said this before. Sometimes when I'm doing anything online, as far as training goes, I feel like I'm getting a water hose of information and it's coming one way. And then people are talking about it and processing it and they're moving on, but I'm not because I still have questions. And
Me
so,
too.
and it just keeps coming. And somehow I have to choose which part that I'm going to nail down and try and focus on and figure out. And I tell myself, I just have to let the other parts go for now. But I'm not going to get so frustrated that I tell myself I can't do this. I don't, I've done that in the past and it's just not true.
It's not true.
It's,
We
it's
can do
not
anything.
true.
I'm going to say, I
Right.
really believe this, that we can do anything, and
Right.
our brains, which is our third house, are really capable of so much more than we can even imagine. And so I just think this is so interesting. And if you just think about how important it is to be open minded to your own potential.
Think about all the things you do before you even, let's say, start your workday, as an example. You get up, you take care, you shower, do all of those things. Then you make breakfast and you make yourself a cup of coffee. Then you get in the car and you drive to where you need to go. And you really haven't even started your day. In your mind, you haven't started even being productive. But I mean, making a cup of coffee the way that you like it is a learned skill, right? And you probably have a variety of ways to make it, and you know exactly how much time it takes to do it. You know the perfect recipe, and you can coordinate your breakfast so the toast is toast and the coffee is coffee at the right time, and you've got it timed so you hit your front door at a certain time, and you know exactly how to, how to get to where you need to go, and you even know alternate routes to get there should surprises happen. So that's all command decision making before you even answer an email. And it's all happening automatically.
Yeah, it is happening automatically, which, well, and I go back to like, since we're on this third house of, I think most creatives, most people that are writers, most people that are, they're all doing it automatically. They're doing all of that information that you're just saying, and they're able to just do it without so much thought. I mean, a writer, if you think about a writer, I don't think they're thinking before they're writing. I think they're just writing. It's like they're driving the car. It's
Like I always keep telling myself this. I mean, I firmly believe this. I think it really comes down the ideas, the concepts, it's that dream, intuition, intellect, mind, frequency, which is a real frequency that is everywhere. Some people tap into it and they bring it through their mind and they manifest it through their hands. They write a song, they pick up a guitar, and suddenly, when people hear it, they're connecting deeply to the sound, what it's saying. And I know I've said this to you before. I found it so interesting how the sound of a song matches the words to a song. I know it should be self-evident that those things happen, but why is it we we know when the sound matches the words? Because it's the vibration, that very specific vibration that creates, that touches us in a way that the artist meant it to. Very, clear as a bell emotions, not using difficult to understand concepts, not at all. Working with familiar emotions and familiar words and familiar sounds that are everywhere, but they work the sound and the words into something that's very specific and that moves us.
yeah, and it makes me think, going back to what you said earlier about how important that third house is to going to the fifth house of figuring out the creativity, that to then get it broadcasted out into the universe and it touches our soul in that deep, beautiful, almost cosmic. I mean, the ninth house is connected to God, it's connected to belief, it's connected to the
Hmm.
higher power. And
Hmm.
so it goes right back to that whole
Hmm.
idea that you said, fifth, going in the importance of having that third house, the information going
Hmm.
into the fifth, then created and
Hmm.
then putting it out into the world. And so music,
Hmm.
there's no better expression than that, than watching
Hmm.
music or with the words and the sound. And I mean, we've talked about movies, all of that, right? It's all these artistically.
And I think fairy tales fall into that third, fifth, ninth house continuum because, fairy tales are kid stories and they're very simple and they're spoken word, right? They're
Right.
handed down. You sit at the bedside of the child and you tell these stories, right? And then they can go into the fifth house where they become more expressive, and they become more a little bit more set in the story. So if you're talking individually to someone about a story, it can be personalized, right? You're telling the story of Cinderella. You use examples from your real life. You improvise. You do all kinds of things. But in the fifth house, I think it becomes more of a, the basic structure of the story was there and it's commonly accepted story. And then the ninth house, that's where the fairy tale becomes myth, I think, right? It just permeates the culture. It's handed down to generations. And the story is told in movies and in plays and
Oh yeah,
in
it's
books.
repeated over and over and over again. I mean, you're these stories are just part of our culture. It's part of our everything.
Yes.
They stay and then they create our society. In a way, it is very interesting how much it creates the our knowing, like our belief systems are right. I mean, but I mean, it's amazing. I love some of those old grim fairy tales.
Yes.
They're so brilliant, and there's always a learning lesson in it, and a higher learning lesson. I mean, you go back to that ninth house of what's the meaning of it all, and you could feel a lot of the meaning of life in the fairy in fairy tales. I mean, there's always a lesson, and the stories always can go back to something that could help you understand your life better.
Yes. And I think that there's deeper understandings that occur from, let's say, the third house of just sharing the story at the bedside with a child. The child understands it in this, the simplest stories of oh, this is an exciting beginning, an exciting middle, and a happy ending. And then, it's expressed again in the fifth house, maybe with more embellishment, more color, but more formed. And then a deeper understanding there as well, right? But the ninth house is where the
It's still
understanding
fun. Yeah, it's really still fun. It's still
right.
light. I always
Entertaining.
say like it's fairy tales are so wasted on children. It's like, do you have like even books? Or I mean, I am very big on like recommending children's books to people I work
Hmm.
with. And like one of my favorite books is The Giving Tree. It's the most brilliant book. Every grown up should read this once a year. It puts like life in perspective. But it is, there's stories for children. But are they? Are they stories
Hmm.
for children? Because
Hmm. There's
if we could live that, we would get the meaning of life, right?
yes.
The things won't
Eh,
make you happy. Just being present with one another and sitting on that log, right? Do you remember? Do you remember the story of the giving tree?
I don't.
Yeah, everything's taken away, and all the tree wanted to be happy, and so he wanted the boy to be happy. So he gave him all his leaves, he gave him his trunk, he gave the thing, and at the end, he said, "Are you happy?" And he's like, "I just need a seat to sit with." And the tree was just happy that he was sitting with them. The old man was there and still was probably not that happy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was a little bit of a glitch there again. I'm
Oh, I
sorry I
think we're
missed that.
losing you from the storm, but it's I'll say stories have a lot to share with us.
And where would we be without them, I wonder? Where would we would be, I think we wouldn't have left our caves, I don't think, if we didn't have these
Well,
stories.
we go back to another third house word. I'm say because I know we're really stuck on this third house, but it's choices. And maybe if we weren't with the stories, we would probably not make the choices that we do make. And so when hearing these childhood stories, learning our lessons through storytelling, right?
Hmm.
Maybe our choices are maybe we make better choices. That's our hope.
Yeah, I'm sorry you cut out again
So did
there.
you. But I'll say to you, I love our house conversations, and I'm so grateful to have these conversations with you. And I can't wait to talk about the fourth house.
Yeah, one more thing about fairy tales is that they wouldn't have lasted this long at all if they didn't have a deeper resonance. They would have just been simple stories that you forget in a day or two. But there's something going on with them, that really gets to the root of life and experience and awareness and consciousness. And it has to do with, you know, love and wisdom and whether or not the world is a safe and happy place. Are you, what is your role? Where do you fit in the world? These are where I think stories help us figure these things out.
Yeah, I do. I think that's true. Those stories have lasted a lifetime, and not all stories do. I mean, that's very interesting to think about. They are stories that keep on, and they try to change some of the stories, and when they do, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You try to, change something that works and is really good, and yeah, some things are not meant to be changed, I'll say.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, well, I really appreciate you. I'm going to send you a really interesting fairy tale because I had never read it, and once I sent it, I could even like put it on the bottom. But I had never read it, and I was like, "Wow, this is like a brilliant fairy tale." So maybe I'll try to remember it for next week. I don't even remember the name of the fairy tale, but I had never heard of it before, and it's great.
Yeah, send it to me when you get a chance. I would love to see
All
it.
right, I will. Well,
Okay.
I have a good week.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. I don't know. It's like my spirit is opening up when I speak this way, which is healing and
Yeah.
centering.
Well, maybe that's why you go back. Okay, so think about the genius of that comment. And when we speak and we talk about things without the idea of knowing what we're going to talk about, how it really goes into so it opens up and it melds into the fourth house of its healing, speaking and having conversations and not knowing what we're going to say before we say it. There's radical healing in that, right?
Yes, because eventually the conversation will get to a deep, profound place. So wherever you start, that really doesn't matter because you're just going to get to where you're really illuminating parts of our existence that we don't often look at. We know it's there, but
Yeah, but we
we
don't
don't
spend the
shine a
time.
light
I
on it.
mean, if you think about just where we spend our time and how important it is, I think there's what our society is so missing is just, I love what you said. We feel so excited and alive and whatever. It feels right. It feels right. And I think it's because, okay, there's two people sitting here having a conversation with not having it to with not trying to prove something. And I think about that going from the third house to the ninth house. Ninth house, you want to prove something. The third house really isn't. There's nothing to prove. It's just, there's something so light about it.
It's playful energy too. It's playful.
Yeah. And it's like it's so funny because they think joy is the fifth house, but there is something very joyful of having really conversations about things that learning something new. And I learned something. I learned a lot of new things today, I'll say. And can we learn something new every day?
Hmm. And be open to it.
Yeah, it is. I think, well, you go back, you would never be bored. And that is very much a third house word, boredom.
Right.
So, well, thank you, Phil. I do
Thank you,
feel healed
Courtney.
too. And I wonder how I think we're going to be so healed in our fourth house conversation.
Can't wait.
Me too. I'm going to give you a big hug.
Right back at you.
We'll see you soon.